Hi, my name is Robert Lee. I'm representing the travel office today. In the travel office, we have myself, Kelly McGarry, my colleague, and also my manager, Teresa Athen. So let's get right into this. We're going to start off with the Seattle-Tacoma Airport. We're starting with this because we've had inquiries and concerns with the level of customer experience for international visitors, and also the concern with congestion for just business travel in general. So you can see here in 2016, we're ranked number 9 in the US, number 28 in the world. Over 45 million passengers have either come in or come out of SeaTac. It's an explosive growth if you look at the last 3 years. 7.7%, 12.9%, 8% last year. And I'm assuming that you can expect another explosive year of growth this year as well. This shows us that, we are number 9, like I said in the previous slide, but who is above us? So Atlanta is number 1 in the US and also in the world. Over 104 million passengers. Anyone that's been to Atlanta knows how ginormous that airport is. It's a very efficiently spaced machine, Atlanta is. You have LAX. You also have O'Hare Airport in Chicago, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, JFK in New York, Denver, Colorado, San Francisco, also in California, and then Las Vegas, Nevada, and then we are 9th. So we're kind of close to San Francisco now and Denver. I guess we can expect us to leapfrog Las Vegas within a year or two. So some of the ideas floated to try to alleviate some of the congestion. Number 1 is separate international airport, but the Port Authority has no interest in reducing customer experience for international travelers by splitting the airport out. The main issue is that while there are international locations that do have 2 separate airports, one domestic in the main city, but then they've grown out of it and built a large, huge international airport outside the city. Since the United States is so big, the idea is that we want SeaTac to be a large international hub. It'd be a huge economic driver for our region, but we don't want people to have to come into an international airport, then take ground transportation to the domestic airport to catch their connecting flight to another state or another city. There's also like I said, there's issues with the connections with domestic flights. It would also increase the number of vehicles on the roads and the number of planes in the skies. We have Painfield here. We do know that there's Alaska Airlines and United Airlines will be flying in and out of Painfield. There's cooperation between SeaTac and Painfield, but is not an official partnership to help alleviate the traffic to Seattle. They are competitors. Painfield is actually further away from University of Washington than SeaTac by I think about 10 minutes. So they are competitors in procuring business, and we do not foresee SeaTac viewing Painfield, giving them extra business just to alleviate congestion. Moses Lake was another idea floated out, I believe, in 1994. There's a large funding hurdles required for the billions of dollars required for the high-speed rail out to Moses Lake. The quote was $4 to $8 billion in 1994. So we can safely assume that that is far many more billions of dollars just with inflation alone. We also have Boeing Field, which is north of SeaTac. The 2 main issues here are that they share the same airspace as SeaTac, and they share the same road congestion along the same corridor of the I-5. Unfortunately, Boeing Field would be a good option because of the large landing strip, so they can take on large planes, but that does not solve any of the congestion issues at all. So here's some of the things that they are going to be doing. The main one here is they're expanding, a little bit expanding, mainly trying to streamline the international arrivals facility. So they're expanding it out. You can see on the concourse on the image here on the bottom, the orange section is what will be new or expanded out. They're also building an aerial walkway to South Satellite, so they won't have to take the tram or any possible buses or any other options that they may have. So they're going to increase the number of gates from 12 to 20. They also increase the number of passport check booths, which is a huge benefit, from 30 to 80. Also increasing the size and number of bag claim carousels from 4 to 7. And it will be estimated 660 million, and assuming a little bit more as well. So we're looking forward to those expansions. So another thing that people have asked in the past is, why don't they build additional roadways, a third lane in the arrivals departures? So we have asked CTAC in the past, and actually the issue is not the number of lanes. It's actually the issue is the limited number of surface area for the airport. So the way that's designed has a smaller surface area on the inside where the parking and where the roadway is, and it has a larger surface area on the outside for the gates and terminals, which obviously is to maximize the gates and terminals, but actually it minimizes the surface area for vehicles for picking up and dropping off and so forth. So while they have considered it, the issue is twofold: is that still constrained by the small surface area for the check-in and check-out areas, and also if they wanted to build a third lane, they would still be large construction needs, or they would have to shut down lanes and make it worse. So that is something they have considered. I think they are still considering it for their long-term plans. So next is the Real ID Act. What is the Real ID Act? Maybe some of you have heard of it, some of you not. It was passed in 2005. It was enacted for the 9/11 Commission's recommendation that the federal government set standards for the issuance of sources of identification, such as driver's licenses. The Act established minimum security standards for state-issued driver's licenses and identification cards, and prohibits federal agencies from accepting for official purposes cards from states that do not meet these standards. And Washington State does not meet that standard. The Real ID Act actually will begin enforcement in 2020, starting on October 1st, 2020. Every traveler will need to present a Real ID compliant license or another acceptable form of identification for domestic air travel. So we do have an extension. The previous deadline was January 22nd, 2018. We were extended to October 10th, 2018. The state is supposed to show that we're making progress towards compliance towards the Act, towards, to close a gap between now and 2020. Our current guidance is to encourage travelers to obtain alternate forms of ID that is compliant with the Real ID Act. Even though the Act actually starts official enforcement in 2020, we are viewing 10/10/2018 as the hard deadline, because there is absolutely no guarantee that our state legislature or funding requirements or any of these obstacles can get in the way to prevent our state from making the proper progress towards compliance. And if that does happen, any travelers that need to travel after 10/10/2018 may not be able to fly. So here's examples of compliant IDs with the Real ID Act at currently. So the Washington Enhanced Driver's License is compliant. The Global Entry, Nexus, Sentry, and FAST programs through the Homeland Security are compliant as well. The U.S. passport card and a U.S. passport, of course. What is reimbursable? The Washington Enhanced Driver's License is not reimbursable. It is not de minimis. So we believe that personal benefit is not too trivial or minor to merit consideration. The personal benefit to someone that would need the Enhanced Driver's License for their day-to-day living, a day-to-day business outside of state business, the benefit would be too great to consider it de minimis. The Global Entry, Nexus, Entry, and Fast Passes are still not reimbursable, of course. The U.S. passport card is not reimbursable. So if you wanted to know what a passport card is, the passport card is a real ID compliant card. It looks kind of like a driver's license. It looks like an official U.S. ID. The problem is that you can only use it entering the United States at land border crossings and sea ports of entry from Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and the Bermuda. The passport card cannot be used for international air travel. I believe it does not meet the requirements, the international requirements. The US passport for domestic travel is not reimbursable. So someone needs to go across the country and they want to upgrade from their regular Washington driver's license to a US passport for domestic travel. That is not reimbursable because a passport is not required. They can still get the Washington enhanced driver's license. So the US passport for international travel will still be reimbursable just as it has in the past. So there really is no change to our policy for what's reimbursable. It's still the US passport or any passport or international visa required for travel internationally. But domestic, ID is not going to be reimbursable. Next is the RIBA scanning policy. The RIBA scanning policy is actually managed by the Records Management Services Office. Barbara Benson is director there. She's great. She usually will consult with the department, figure out what their needs are, determine what can be attached to RIBA, what can't be, or how to manage the business process. And then the department would file on a RIBA scanning policy with her department. The new policy is going to be that they have a blanket approval for the scanning policy. The policy will be managed by records management internally, but you need to follow the requirements to say that you're following the Ariba scanning policy, the blanket policy. So the link is here. You can click on it to go to their website to view the scanning policy. You can also see it here. It is kind of small because I try to fit it all on this slide. It's a 3-page document. In the beginning of it, it's just some information on the policy, and then you could go down, you can start seeing the scanning technical requirements, quality control, image enhancement, and minimum security standards. These are all the requirements from the state for record retention. So as long as you can follow these requirements, you should be okay. Okay, the next is ADA compliance. So we know in the last year we've changed some of our policies to accommodate not accommodate, but streamline the approval process for someone that needs a ADA health accommodation for traveling. So we allowed administrator approval for a lot of this. But to reduce the HIPAA liability, we've actually talked to the Office of Disability Services, which is a central HR unit, and they are highly knowledgeable and very open to any of your needs. Departments are recommended to forward ADA accommodation inquiries to the Disability Services Office. It's actually even better to just tell the employee to contact the office individually. The department can also email DSO to obtain confirmation regarding the traveler's requested accommodation and if it fulfills their medical order. Do not attach any documentation with medical information as an expense report. So if you do ask them for confirmation because you want to attach it to the expense report for approval, they have let us know, the DSO office, that they will not be very specific, because it is a very touchy liability area. So they may will have some kind of vague answer for you indicating that it is or is not an appropriate accommodation. But they are great, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to them. They are all knowing of all this health ADA requirements. So here are some of the updates on the potential policy changes we talked about last meeting. The first one is the submission deadline. The policy, is being proposed as travel reimbursement claims must be submitted within 60 to 90 days from the conclusion of travel. Expenses claimed outside of 60 to 90 days are subject to a tax withholding. So we are still reviewing this, trying to figure out what the business processes would be, when it's compliant or non-compliant, and also seeking approval from, those above us as well, because this would be a policy that has a large impact on campus in trying to reverse some of the trends that some faculty and staff may have in not turning things in because they're used to different business processes. So if they're used to turning in all their expenses yearly at the end of the school year or at the end of at the end of the grant. We do see some issues with this. The reason for this policy proposal is actually compliance with the IRS requirement for a reasonable time, which is one of the 3 IRS accountable plan requirements. So this is not a state requirement or strictly a federal requirement. This is an IRS requirement for travel reimbursements in general. So unfortunately, there are no exceptions for us. For the survey results, we saw that a lot of people thought it was constructive. About 60%, about 40% thought it might be an obstructive policy. So the comments for the people that were concerned were mainly about what are we going to do when it's outside the 60 or 90 days? Can we expand it out to 120 days, 150 days? So these are all things that we're exploring. The technical deadline is 60 days, which is the safe harbor period from the IRS. So even 90 days would be an extra 30 days outside the technical allowance. We don't really foresee ourselves going to 120, 180 days or something like that. But we would have other allowances such as from the end of travel. So maybe they have added personal time to the end of their trip. So when they come back, or maybe they traveled, but there's those expenses were at the beginning of the research and they're at a foreign location. Maybe when they come back, that's when the 60 days would start or 90 days would start. So these are all things we're looking at, but there's so many different scenarios. We're still taking a look into it to make sure that we make the right decision. The next one is lodging exceptions. So this is not a change to the allowable lodging exceptions because those are limited from the state of Washington. But we're looking to limit the 5-mile vicinity clause from conference meeting hotel because currently you're allowed over 150%, which is lodging plus meals per diem times 150%. So the cap is pretty high for 150%, but the conference exception allows you to break that rule and go basically into infinity dollars. So we're looking to limit it because we don't want travelers to think that they should not be staying at the conference hotel. We should be encouraging travelers to stay at the conference hotel where there's more intangible benefits like networking, more collaboration, and less expenses. While sometimes a conference hotel is more expensive, technically without the additional ground transportation, additional parking, car rental, and all these other expenses, it can be seen as a cheaper option, especially because they're performing more business-related duties. We're also looking to expand a special event and disaster to be exempt from the 150% rule. So there's 2 things here. The first rule we're talking about, limiting the vicinity clause to 150% rule, that we can already do if we wanted to because that is stricter than the state policy. The special event and disaster to be exempt from the 150% rule actually would be looser than the state policy. So we would need their blessing and we would need to have some kind of conversation with them, get some kind of waiver, or kind of discuss the traveler safety aspect of it. So we're not 100% sure on what we're going to go with, or if it's going to be this policy would be approved, by our director, or this is something that would be good for the campus in whole. So we're still looking at the information, the data. So there's no effective date yet. The reason for this potential change is a reassessment of policy from the observed risk and traveler safety. So we want to prevent any kind of abuse or campus feeling like they can do anything they want within 5 miles of the conference or meeting hotel. We still want that area to be available, especially for advancement and other areas that use this, researchers that don't just go to conferences, straightforward conference registration and such. And then this special event and disaster being exempt from the 150% rule, is a big deal for us, especially when we have travelers going to areas that have large, humongous conferences. They're not all huge like that, but like the Epic conference, where there's over 1 million people that show up, and also for disaster traveler safety when we have people out on the ocean and they need to come to ground because of typhoon. We feel like it is unreasonable when they're getting capped at 150%. The survey results were 80% positive for this and 20% concerned. So the main reason for the concerned questions were people that are doing mostly advancement and also the type of travel that's not really conference related because their travelers don't have usually a set hotel to stay at. So we want to make sure that all campus needs are being encompassed here still. So then we're going to go into 3 policies that are changing. So the package deal policy is going to be effective January 1st, 2018, so this coming year. For all package deals, the documentary evidence must provide adequate evidence. If proper documentation can't be obtained, the University of Washington can't reimburse the expenses. For example, a lodging receipt must have name, location, dates of stay, and itemized charges, which may not be available on a package deal. So if anyone does not know what a package deal is, sometimes it is a package of services like airfare, hotel, and car rental bundled together by Expedia or Orbitz, and it's sold at one low price. And the reason why we need this change is because we actually need to be compliant with the IRS documentary evidence requirement. So we do need these details for a business expense to be substantiated and eligible to be a non-taxed business reimbursement. So we'll have some additional information for everyone in the coming weeks on how to do the payment if this isn't compliant. So this is a taxability issue, so we view it as very high risk. So what the question is going to be is, okay, so someone did get a package deal, now what? So there's 2 things. If they're non-UW, you have to do the tax reporting to the 1099 office, to the accounts payable office. And then if they are a UW employee, then you have to send an email to the payroll tax, which is pr-tax@uw.edu with the payment details. And then the employee would have withheld from their next available paycheck. So we're hoping that all the departments can get this information out to their travelers the best they can. We are concerned about especially students that get small travel stipends, and then they try to get Expedia or Kayak or some of these other package deal programs where they can save an extra $50, $80. And when they do that, unfortunately, they're going to be penalized because there is this IRS requirement for itemized receipts. So we hope that there's not too many people impacted by it. I think departments have been doing quite a good job in trying to police this. I know that some travelers will fall through the cracks when they do not get the proper prior approvals or come to you for your advice. But generally, we don't see too many of them, surprisingly. But we're looking forward to the concerns and the problems people will run into. But unfortunately, this is something we have to do because this is another IRS requirement that we're moving towards. And then we have the 2 other policies here that are going to hopefully make life easier for everyone and for ourselves as well. The non-resident alien visa documentation. So eligible visa types will require passport image page and electronic I-94 per usual. But the changes here are the J1 and the F1 will now require the additional documentation of the DS 2019 or the I-20. The effective date will be next Monday on November 20th, 2017. And the reason for this change is we're doing a realignment of the policy with the U.S. citizenship, immigration services rules, and also the visa restrictions from the American Competitiveness Workforce Act of 1998. So I believe that the J1 needing the DS 2019, the F1 needing the I-20 was a way to try to align ourselves with the honorarium requirements to try to make things, a little bit more streamlined so everyone knows what just the rules are. So if you have a J1, you need the DS 2019. There's been a shift in travel, so there's a lot more departments bringing people in for research or just for a speaking engagement, and they're just getting paid only travel reimbursements. So we do see a shift in business processes. So we don't view the uniformness as a big benefit to campus. We view the, saving time, saving resources for departments that have become extremely lean as a bigger, business need. So we are opening up our policy to the maximum possible, to the letter of the law of what we need to do. So we do not need the DS 2019 or the I-20. The reasoning is we are checking for the it's a WB, WT, the B1, B2, because if they have a B2 or WT, they're limited to 9 days of meals and lodging. So that's our threshold. This policy is not changing for the honorarium or any payments to foreign nationals and through other means, because they have other thresholds they're looking for. They need other information that we do not need. So do not, expect them to change their requirements in the future at all. You can expect them to have the same requirements or maybe even more, depending on what, Homeland Security or immigration has. But from our point of view, for our needs, we do not need additional documentation. So we hope that this does help departments. We do know that departments that have a lot of J1 and F1 travelers, hopefully this will be a time saver for your departments. Business class rail. So business class rail can be approved now in two ways. The only way in the past was from dean, vice provost, vice president, or chancellor approval. The new way will be that way, and the second way would be a criteria being met from A and B. So A is less than coach airfare, so we need a comparison airfare to prove that's less than coach airfare, or is the only mode of travel available. So it is possible. There are some locations on the East Coast that have, express transit through rail, and that'd be the only way of going, in European countries and Asian countries. Also necessary for business interaction or to conduct UW business. So we expect to see so-and-so took business rail. Maybe your department doesn't have a dean that's very accessible, so you're doing this a secondary way of doing it for the approval. So get the comparison airfare to prove that the business class is cheaper, and then some kind of approval showing that it's necessary for business interaction or to conduct UW business. So those are the main things. The main thing is being less than coach airfare. The effective date will be November 20th, 2017. The reason for this is it's actually compliant with the Washington State travel policy. So in the past where people did not use rail a lot, now they have been the last 2 years. So we have been looking at this policy for quite some time, and we are finally happy to bring it to campus. 90% of people were ecstatic about it. 10 people were concerned because it's the business class in general. But we wanted to remind people that the Amtrak system in Washington State is actually owned by the state. So it's owned by the state of Washington. They are our family state employees. They're part of our family. And we want to make sure that we're using state resources when possible, especially when they're better. That's a more sustainable option. It's cheaper. We would love to see travelers just take a lift to King Station, take the Amtrak down to Portland, and then take their lift, to the hotel, to reduce the ground transportation costs. When they're on the train, there are power outlets, there's Wi-Fi, so they can still work. We're seeing a lot of benefits here. And actually, Amtrak is looking for ways to try to get employee discounts for the state of Washington so they can try to promote even more state business. So they have let us know. We don't know if that's going to be possible, but what we're really looking forward to, and we're trying to push for that as well. The last that is the last policy, and then we're going to RIBA enhancements here. We don't have a definitive list of what's being changed because we have a lot of the business requirements out to the developers, and then they are going to let us know what's possible and what's not possible. So the go live date is approximately December 15th. There's going to be impact for users across campus. The plan is to have all expense reports fully processed. That doesn't mean submitted, so that means all the approvals done by December 15th, which will probably mean that me and Kelly will be in the office, a few extra hours trying to make sure that we're spending all the hours trying to get all the expense reports through that are flagged for our review. And then any expense reports in the middle of the approval process would have to be withdrawn. So if you have something still in process and it gets caught over December 15th threshold period, then you may have to withdraw it and edit any of the modified fields and resubmit it. So hopefully most people have experience with this, then you know why we have to do this. If you haven't had experience with this, don't worry, you can give us a call, send us an email, and we can walk you through it after December 15th. It's generally just like a check mark here, a check mark there, or one comment here that you need to do, or redo one line item and just resubmit it. So here are the requested changes that we submitted. There are other ones as well, but they're more technical that I have not listed on here. So here's the first one: removing a hard stop for living allowance being in the past. So anyone that does a living allowance will know that there are issues with trying to submit the living allowance when the traveler has already arrived. You have to split out the days, the past days, into meal per diem and living allowance for all days in the future. If you don't get all the approvals on the same day, maybe a compliance approver is out, or maybe it's a funding approver is out, administrator is gone for vacation or out sick, then you know they have to continually withdraw it, edit it, submit it. It can be a huge drain on resources and really prevent the traveler from getting a timely reimbursement. So we're making this change here. All living allowances still come through us, so we'll be checking for compliance anyways. We're removing the visa type VWP because there's no technical VWP visa type in the dropdown. Rename visa type VWB to WB, renaming visa type VWT to WT. The main reason here is that when you pull the I-94 for the visa requirement for documentation, it actually says WB or WT. I believe that it used to say VWB or VWT, or it used to say that on the customs website. It was somewhere officially, and then when they implemented this system, but now now it shows WB or WT. So when new employees are coming in and doing expense reports, we do get the question, not a lot, but often enough where someone asks us, I pulled the I-94, it says WB, but on the drop down, the closest one is VWB. Is that the same thing? It's not intuitive enough, so we want to make sure that we try to eliminate some of these barriers to making sure that all these employees have an easier time learning the system and getting reimbursements for their travelers. Increase character limit in the additional traveler information text field. Currently, I believe it's set to 100. We want to expand that to 255. We also want to update direct deposit links from ESS to new ISC links. This is under the direct deposit, yes or no button. We also added and removed various questions to line items to promote compliance. So it's mainly for a reminder for all the veterans out there, is this business requirement? And also it's also an educational tool that we're looking at for new employees. We want to rearrange the line items in the menu on the right-hand side to accommodate new line items that we want to add, and organize the expense types. So what we're looking at is theoretically like a more of an organized structure. So all lodging type of expenses, are in a section so you can clearly see them. You also have telecommunications in a section. You have meals in a section, transportation in a section. So we're looking to try to organize it a little bit better so it's a little bit more intuitive. The first way we've done it was intuitive when we first did it, but with all the changes we've made in the past from here and there, we believe that it's not as intuitive as it should be now. So we want to just bring it up to speed. Some of the line items we're hoping that they're going to add for us is bicycle, mortgage, water taxi, early check-in, late checkout, data plan, phone card, SIM card, student abroad insurance. Also book, electronic accessory, map, and translator. We also want to add different approval types for the airfare. So under coach airfare, you'll see additional ways of doing it. So admin approval, 88 docs with DSO, 14-hour non-fed funds, 64x UW business. So those are the 4 options. I mean, those are the 4 realistically only options that are allowed. So we want to have all the options available. So when an employee is looking at it or they're doing the expense report, they can, if they have a business class, they can select it and they can clearly see, okay, what are the options for the approvals? It's Dean or VP approval, okay? There's 88 docs with DSO, so that's the health thing. There's also 14-hour rule for non-fed funds, and also our 64 budget. So those are the 4 allowable ways. So that way when someone looks at it, they can see it, and then they can make their decision on what to attach or how to go about getting the approval. We'll add and remove payment types from line items to help departments use expense reports to document pro card and CTA payments. So there are departments out there that are already doing this. You guys know who you are. Some departments that are curious. So there are departments that are using expense reports as a way to consolidate all the documentation for pro card, CTA payments for anything travel related. So maybe they got the registration on the pro card, So what happens is on the expense report, they're putting registration on there and they're listing it as paid by Pro Card. So they're not getting reimbursed for it. It will not be credited as a reimbursement to the traveler, but they're listing it there and they're putting documentation there, so they have one cohesive, comprehensive document for that trip. We're also changing the account codes for membership to 0330 and shipping account code to 0324. We did have requests for other ones, such as printing being a big one, but we know that printing has two different object codes, right? One for where you use a printing plant on campus, and then there's one, just printing outside of campus. So we do know that travelers use it on campus and outside of campus. We didn't want to be, even though we're adding these line items, we did not want to be adding too many, especially duplicates of the same one just for different object codes. So we didn't change it. So it's still going to be 0416, and then you'd have to expense transfer it over or continue to use the XR. So we hope that these two changes will at least help. We really wanted to add more, but we want to make sure the proper object codes are being used. And we also want to make sure that we don't muddy up eTravel too much with other, things that we're trying to just add in here to help make things a little bit easier for people. While we love to help make it easier, streamline a little bit, there's still some separation still required. Here's the data. We usually do the data in the beginning, to get your guys' interest, but we put it in the back here, and you'll see why. We were combining this with another interesting topic we're going to get into. So here's the data from 2015 and 2016. You can see here that we reviewed close to 6,000 expense reports that fiscal year. And you can see the data here. So the expense report details, the top row is showing us the reasons why something can be flagged for our review. The flags that are green, the number green is something that means that was okay. The red is, that being a reason for denial. So for example, if you look at personal time, 2,313 of them were compliant. Only 88 of them were not, and the reasons are below. So 69 of them were from documentation, maybe probably a lack of comparison airfare. Hard policy, so something that's not allowed at all. Maybe they literally purchased a vacation ticket on Disney Cruise or something. I don't know, but it would be pretty rare. Process error, so that's generally something that's unavoidable on your end, or a complete misunderstanding. So usually it's the Astra error that everyone knows. So to move, if you have to move the correct approvers onto the budget. So, and you do that through Astra. If you don't, then there's a blank spot, and then we get pulled in to the approval flow. And what happens is we can't approve it because we don't have the proper authorization. So then we'll notify the department that, hey, the authorizations need to be properly set. So that's the process error usually. And then calculation is just a miscalculation on prorating something, or maybe the numbers are wrong. So these are generally hard for us to catch because we're reviewing so many expense reports. But when we do catch it, of course, we let you guys know. And then we have a catch-all, which, as you can see, we were able to fit most of everything, or almost actually all of everything, in the 4 other ways. And then we also have these other reasons why we deny it. So these are a little bit more detailed. So, for example, on the left-hand side, you can see all the different types, general types of reasons why we're denying something, and then you can see also the reasons up top are the same as well. D is documentation, P is policy, hard policy, E is error in process, C is calculation, O is other. And at the very bottom, you see top total. Top total is from the slide before. So we took all those totals. And then the grand total is from this slide and the previous slide. And you can clearly see the number one reason for denial is documentation. So it's generally not malicious. It's just somebody forgot, or something got stuck in the scanner, didn't scan that second page of the receipt. It's just generally, very easy things to fix. And then policy and then errors are, at about 200 each. The calculation is very low. Generally, because it's generally hard for us to catch because we can't catch all those errors. But generally, it's pretty rare that we see any of those errors at all. And then the next year, so this is 2016, 2017, this last year here, you can see that our workload had basically doubled in just this area alone. We can kind of extrapolate and say that customer service has doubled as well, and we have the same number of employees. So we hope our biggest concern, to be honest, is that while we're trying to do all our work functions, we're concerned that there's a big hit to our customer service. So we want to be available and to educate new employees, be there to help departments with any of these weird situations that they need guidance with, step by step, trying to figure these little things out. All these little things can be really difficult, and we want to make sure we have enough time, mainly resources available. So we are concerned that there's a huge explosion of expense reports. So the number of expense reports have not doubled. So even though the number of we've reviewed have doubled, the number has not doubled. So it's gone up about 3,000 to 5,000 every year. 5,000 in the big years, 3,000 on the smaller years. We mainly see the reason why the number of ERs that are being flagged for us is because the type of travel that's taking place. There's far more international travel going on now. So domestic travel is pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Ariba is a great program for generally easier travel like that. And that was great from the past. But as you can see now, and most departments already know, there's a lot more different types of travelers coming in. There's a lot more like VIP type travelers coming in. There's like a lot of entire research teams coming in, being relocated now. A lot of international outreach, a lot of advancement, recruiting. Recruiting is just not in Washington anymore. People, we're recruiting students from China, European, like everywhere. The footprint of University of Washington is huge, and by doing that, it's just very easy to move these expenses into more high-risk areas. It's not that people are being more risky or being negligent or malicious. It is generally because there are just more areas of concern for international travel because it's not so straightforward. So you can see with the bigger sample size that non-US travelers have exploded. You also see travel personal time has is exploded from the previous year, basically doubled. You also see a lot of the other categories like that require manual payment, like per diem advances and wires. So that's a lot of those are manual work processes for us as well. A lot more employees are viewing travel as more of a compensation kind of work benefit, not as a duty of work. And it's more of a millennial kind of thing, more of a modern day kind of thing. So we only expect to see more personal time. We do not expect that to go down. We just expect that to keep exploding up as more people are focusing their recreational funds, discretionary funds on travel experiences. Here's the other breakdown of other types of denials we have. And you can see in the bottom again, the vast majority, right? The vast majority is documentation. So also you got, par policy and errors are still about 1-to-1 ratio here. So 200 each. Calculation, nothing for other. So the reason why we had that data there is that we wanted to show you all the data that we're collecting. All that data is collected actually manually. It's not it's not a report that we generate. We manually collect it because we don't have the ability to do it automatically, but also we want to make sure that we're getting the in-depth details that we want to make sure the risk assessment is proper for us and for campus. So the next section here is a travel office high-risk approvals. So what is a risk flag? The travel office gets a risk flag notified, and we get put in the approval flow for expense reports. In the future, because you saw the explosion in the workload for us, we're going to try to focus more on the high-risk areas. The reason being is that we want to concentrate our efforts on the things that departments have been requesting our support on. So getting the registration expense report with personal time is still being flagged for us. While it's great that we're checking it, we don't mind. Is that the problem is that, departments are more concerned or inquiring or requesting our support are to review the ones that are a little more complex, the one that have more issues on them. So in order to make more time for that and to focus a more in-depth review, we're just going to be focusing on the high-risk flags themselves. So whatever risk flag prompts our travel approval, those are the only ones we'll be checking in the future. The approval does not constitute a complete review of the expense report. So if we get something with a car rental that was an SUV, we're reviewing that for the SUV and the justification, but we will not be reviewing the other line items in the expense report. If we see something that's obvious that may be a concern or an issue, of course we will always check it, but we are trying to increase the number that we review that have a bigger concern and reduce the number that of low risk expenses. Travel office may perform random reviews to conduct a risk analysis, so we will be doing sampling of expense reports to make sure that things aren't slipping through the cracks and that we can readjust our risk pool from time to time. So this is things that were removed in 2017, the last year when we did the RIBA modifications. The first one is other ground, other miscellaneous. We removed those. If you remember, we added non-incidental supplies. We removed our risk flag for 2+ check bags, banquet meals, gas, abstract fee, membership. You'll see that in the previous data that they're extremely low risk expenses, and we fixed some of the issues that we had with some of these line items with additional questioning, and by adding other line items as well. So people sometimes may run aground of the policy, mainly because there's no options or it's not available to them readily. So hopefully we made those changes correct, we feel like, in that previous year. This is what it looks like right now. These are the things that we're flagged for currently. So anything that's flagged that have these expenses or these expense types, we get to see all of them. So they will be flagged for us. We get 100% of them. Personal time, non-incidental supply, a non-US, of course, we need to check the visa. Wire payment, bill living allowance, per diem advance, relocation, those are all payment types that require our manual support. Meals paid for others, over 600 miles, a car that's full size or larger, not sole driver, a change fee, only when it's UW business. It used to be change fee for all of them, but it's only when you select UW business and write the justification in. First class, business class, coach upgrade, seat fee, and immunization. So we're looking to change this with the Ariba changes. We're looking to make some modifications. So personal time, we want to change that to personal time plus airfare or personal time plus rental car. Also for non-US, so non-US plus visa status. So when it says non-entering leaving the US, so if someone comes from MIT, but they're a foreign national, we do not need to review that document. So we're trying to let that one pass through without our review. It also will speed up the process, the payment to that person. So over 600 miles, we want to change that to over 1,600 miles. We have a lot of programs on campus now that do a lot of driving. Rarely do we have any issues with mileage over 600 miles now, so we're trying to change the risk profile. We just selected the nearest city where it's outside the normal area of business, and also somewhere where someone would want to take family, spouse, and kids and drive because of a scenic route. The most obvious one for us was San Francisco, Portland and Vancouver, BC being normal areas of business. So, and from Seattle to San Francisco is about 1,614 miles. So we set our threshold at 1,600 miles just to make sure that we catch any of those leisurely scenic routes that people are taking with personal vehicle, to make sure that they attach a comparison airfare or the vehicle was needed because of equipment or something. We want to just make sure, right, those high risk expenses are not just passing through. Also rental car, we have a car that's full size and larger. We want to change that. So we're going to be reviewing SUV, van, truck, or other, and only when you select UW business. So there'll be changes to that line item as well, but we don't want to reveal what those changes are because we don't know what will be possible or not possible. We're also going to remove these risk flags, immunization, and seat fee. So this is what the 2018 risk flags will look like. It's kind of hard to tell what the differences will be. So let me just go to the next slide real quick. So you can compare here with the current risk flags. This is right now on the left-hand side. The right-hand side is what it'll look like after the changes. the proposed quote unquote changes if everything goes through and everything's approved. So this is what it'll look like. So mainly everything stays the same. There's not really much else we could change. I mean, there's some payments things we could try to hopefully make better, like wire payments, or relocation. We could try to make a little bit, streamlined, but it's going to require a lot more stakeholder assistance and, a lot more moving, of the pieces around all the central offices to make those kind of adjustments. So we don't see that those high risk flags coming off. So we don't see any more opportunities to remove risk flags, or so we will only be adjusting the current ones we have based on what we see or the data that we have. We also want to give you an update on the travel survey. We really want to appreciate everyone that participated. We understand, time is very crucial, very rare to come by on campus. With all these lean departments, everyone's trying, of course, doing more with less, or now it seems like more with nothing. So we want to thank everyone that took the time to do it. Over 100 people participated. If you didn't participate, it's okay. We understand. We had, great participation already. The results and comments are being utilized in our new website content. We appreciate everything that you guys said, all the harsh criticisms, all the compliments, everything that you guys added on there. We really appreciate it. So try to put our efforts into the direction that hopefully campus can appreciate. Some things are going to make our jobs a little bit tougher compliance-wise, but hopefully things will make things easier as well. A review of the results will be presented at our next information meeting, because we want to hopefully combine that, couple it together with the new website that's going to be coming out. So for website, we're going to have website testing. So we'll have a sign-up link will be sent through our listserv for user testing. We're seeking feedback for the amount of information presented and the layout. Ideas on the presentation of information and available resources. Feedback regarding travel policies will not be considered for changes during website testing. So while we understand that everyone has great ideas or concerns or feedback about the policy, we also understand that, the policy is really guided by the IRS, right, or the state. But, we always note your concerns, because we'll always bring it up to the state, or we always explore other options. But just know that even though you might give us this feedback during testing, that we really can't do anything with it. Because even if we wanted to change something, we could change it, it would still be a long-term process to get something approved and implement something through Ariba. Doing all these different things, can take 6 months or multiple years. So we just don't want people to be disappointed ahead of time. And when we're asking for feedback, and if you're giving feedback on policies, don't want to let you down by, you might not see that change and be disappointed. So we're just letting you know ahead of time, but we appreciate all the feedback. And we look forward to all the feedback we're going to receive. So the way that it looks like right now is we are on track to get all the content ready by the beginning of December. We'll be sending this listserv out, so hopefully we can have testing and we can have feedback by the end of December. And we're also going to do user testing for people that have no idea about travel. So maybe like interns or maybe a student on campus, people that have no idea what travel is, or maybe somebody in your office that doesn't do any travel reimbursements. And then we take that feedback as well, implement it with the feedback that you guys have given us previously. And then we'll hopefully reveal the website in February with our travel information meeting. So we're really looking forward to that, try to get more resources to everyone. And that's it. That's our travel information meeting. Thank you for viewing this. You can email us at traveluw@uw.edu or call us at 206-543-5858. Thanks very much.